Hey everyone, it's Horror Free for All, and I hope you're doing well today. I have here an independent horror movie from 2024 that I recently saw in Walmart and wanted to check out. So I blind bought it, and I'm glad I did because I really enjoyed it. It was written by Bo Hansen and Riley Torres and directed by L. Van Dyke Saboutson. I hope I'm saying that right. The film in question is Deer Camp 86. I was not expecting to enjoy this movie as much as I did, but holy crap. I don't know what it is about 2024 and indie horror, but they've been putting out some really solid content, and I knew nothing about going into this movie. I noticed that the film takes place in 1986. It's about these six buddies out in the middle of the woods at a deer camp, and I looked at the cover and I'm like, okay, there's some type of creature hunting them down. I had no idea what to expect with it. And while I was watching it, I'm realizing, oh, this is a horror comedy. And holy shit, this has to be one of the funniest horror comedies I have seen in a while. And I have to say, after watching this, I decided to go check out some people's reviews on YouTube about this film just to see how people are reacting to it. And I noticed that some of the people that were behind making this movie dropped some knowledge in the comment section, because there's no, I guess, making of bonus features on this DVD here, about how they made this movie on $100,000 and how they just took a chance on making this idea come to fruition. And that is how you make a movie. You want to make something that you think is a good idea, you take to the grassroots, you get the money, you crowdfund, do whatever, you take out a loan, borrow money, whatever, and you go and make a movie on a cheap budget and you make it with heart. I can clearly tell that happened with this film, and that's not even, putting into account how fun of a watch this was. This is under an hour and a half of a movie, clocking in at an hour and 25 minutes. And I have to say that I had a fun time with this movie. It does have some flaws, and I'll get into that near the end of this review. But off the bat, if you're out there in Walmart, maybe you're out on Amazon Prime kind of looking for, a new horror movie that you haven't seen before to watch, you need to go check this out. Especially if you're into horror comedies. This isn't the average horror comedy that you'll probably find out there that are more focused on the horror. This is definitely kind of focusing on the slice of life and the comedy aspect, I think, over horror. But there are some fun elements to this film that will resonate with you if you're a fan of that subgenre within horror. And yeah, I think there's something for everyone in this film. So yeah, go check this movie out if you haven't seen it before. So I'm going to get into what you're going to expect out of this film without giving too much away. I don't want to get into too many spoilers here because I don't want to give away the whole movie. So I'm going to keep it very brief here. Essentially, in the year of 1986, up in northern Michigan, these six friends, I guess, they're at undisclosed ages. I don't know how old they are. It's never really explained, but it's implied that they're young adults, in the mid-20s maybe. And they all have different backgrounds. You have this bigger guy who's absolutely hilarious, and he's played by J.J. Bidwell. I've never seen him in anything, but holy fuck, he is fucking funny, and I would love to see him in more horror films because he has just this natural charisma, and he's fantastic. You have, character played by him. Then you have your teenage heartthrob-looking guy. You have your token black guy, token Latino friend who's, ex-military. You have your little bitch of the group who kind of reminds me of Squeeze Scolari and Basketball, and how Doug Reamer and Coop Cooper treat him in that film. So he's like the punching bag of the movie. And then you have the guy who owns the hunting truck where they're going to be posted up on this road trip. And these six friends are making the trek down the road, and they have this deer strapped to the hood of the car, and they make their way up to this Indian reservation, or I guess indigenous people reservation, however you want to call it, if you want to be PC about it. They stop near the edge of the reservation when they come across this bar. And the big guy, he wants to go inside and get his drink on, and so does his buddy. So the rest of the guys follow suit, and they enter the bar, and they come across this bartender who is named Star. And Star seems to be hitting it off with the teenage heartthrob guy of the movie, and they seem to be having a mild romantic connection to be had there. But of course, there are some hillbillies up there in the bar, and they want to start problems with this group because they don't like the Latino guy and the black guy. And there's some funny ass jokes in this movie, and I think it's aware about the time it's being made, whether in the setting of the film and the time it's actually being made in 2024. For people wondering if this movie is quote unquote woke, it is not. It's very aware, and it uses that humor in such a perfect deadpan kind of way. And there's a funny ass joke. I don't want to spoil it because I want you to hear it for yourself. But yeah, it's going to make you laugh out loud numerous times in this movie. But they get into a bar brawl, of course, and then after the shuffle, the friends get kind of separated for a split second, and we possibly see something happen to Star very tragically. And after that event happens, the guys are kind of unaware what happens to her, and they peel out. They notice that their car has been vandalized, possibly by these, dickhead hillbillies that they chased out of the bar and beat the shit out of. So they decide to get in their car and head up to the deer hunting lodge where they need to be posted up so they can go hunting in the morning, and they're going to do pair hunting and all that, where they go out in groups of 2 and go out in different directions of the woods to find deer. So they get to the lodge, and, they post up camp for the night, but they don't know, like I said, what happened to Star. And back, I guess, in town, there's a sheriff that hears what happened to her and knows some information about, some other women that had something tragic happen to them, a few years prior. And essentially, there's a connotation that there might be something supernatural afoot. And Star might have alluded to this when she was in the film, earlier to these gentlemen about, there needs to be some type of respect of the land and the animals on it and the people who inhabit it and all that shit. So this kind of ties into this supernatural thread that the main core of the 6 characters have no idea about. So back at the lodge, while the sheriff is going out kind of looking for this mysterious person who's on the note that I think was left behind by the teenage heartthrob guy, the guys are just enjoying the slice of life nature of being out in the woods. And we get some more fucking funny ass humor as they go out and pair hunting, and they pair the big guy up with the little bitch character, and that was just comedic gold. And of course they end up coming across some deer, and they kill the deer and they skin it. And one of the guys, there's a fake out moment where they think he's possibly getting injured by something, and it turns out it's just him ripping out the deer's heart, and they're gonna cook it and eat it. But once they start cooking the deer, some supernatural stuff starts happening, possibly with the meat. And then as the story goes along, there's some weird noises at night, and there's some fake out moments where the little bitch character wakes up screaming, and they think it might be something supernatural afoot, but it ends up being like a deer tick stuck to his nuts or something like that. So it goes that comedy route. Like I said, this is a horror comedy after all. But as the days go on, they start, they brought this portable camera with them, which is an old school one you put on your shoulder, and they think they see something on this recording, which starts pretty much the rest of the events of the film. This is, of course, after they meet with the sheriff, and the sheriff kind of brings them up to speed on possibly what happened to Star. And this is where the movie kind of kicks into high gear. The guys started to notice that there's some things missing throughout the lodge, like bear traps and some rope and stuff. And they, of course, learned that the hard way when they notice the footage. They have to now figure out either we need to stay and handle this thing that we caught on camera, or we need to leave. Some characters might decide to leave, some might decide to stay. And the ones who decide to stay, of course, or reap the consequences via possible bloodshed in their own lives. And in some fun ways, we get to see these characters die in some cool, creative ways. In some grisly, kind of cool, gnarly gory kill kind of ways. And they come up with this kind of Home Alone type of scheme to mildly try to trap it, but they may or may not work out for them. And the climax essentially ends up being the remaining few who have decided to remain as they dwindle down in numbers are trying to escape. And one of them gets taken out of the equation. And then there's a bombshell revelation about who's exactly hunting them down and perhaps who this thing is hunting specifically down. And I'll just leave it at that. And then once that wraps up, we get kind of a send-off for one particular character who I guess needed closure in the situation. And the time in 1986 kind of wraps up and we get a cut to present day. And then there's a random plot twist to be had there. But that in a nutshell is what you're going to expect out of Deer Camp 86. So here's the thing about the movie. I thought that this movie was well written. This is another one of those independent horror films that really capture the authenticness of people and how real people talk. The 6 gentlemen characters in this movie, they all had great chemistry together. You really did buy that they were friends. And good God, were they funny as hell. And I've never heard any of these actors, any of them. And they all did great performances. The guy who played the little bitch character, he was funny. The big guy was the show stealer. He was fucking hilarious. He's played by a gentleman called J.J. Bidwell. If you're out there, J.J., or people that made this movie, get this guy an agent and have him go audition for some horror films, like some bigger budget ones where people get to see his craft. Because he has this natural charisma and his line delivery. I don't know if it was the editing or the director's kind of helping him here, but he was funny as fucking shit. He was funny as shit. And without him in this movie, I don't know how funny it would have come across, but thankfully he's in it because he really brought out the best in all the other characters that he interacted with in this film. And I don't know. There's something about being in the woods that is inherently creepy. And I do like the misdirects this movie throws at you because early on we kind of already know that there are some people that went up and disappeared, right? And something bad happened to them. And once we get to the 6 characters entering the Indian reservation up north in northern Michigan, the story, throws you into the slice of life and throws you into their friendship. And we really get to see a camaraderie between the friends, which is really cool to see in that realistic way. But we also get to see the setup of the paranoia for the audience where, something simple that Star throws out. Hey, you need to respect the land. Hey, you need to respect the animals that you kill, blah, 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 blah. That has impact. And you get to see on screen what could be considered as an ambiguous hint that what happens to Star has direct consequences on this sacred land. And it's so fucking cool and how that is portrayed. And it's so thought-provoking throughout the movie. You really have no idea who did this to Star, what exactly is going on with the land. And it takes a while to get to whatever this thing is on the cover of this, but it's still shrouded in mystery. You're like, is this thing a fucking cryptid? Is this thing a spirit? What the fuck is this thing? It is pretty creepy. Now, I'm going to get down to brass tacks. The movie flies by because you're just so enthralled with the character, so the pacing is really good. The music is low budget, but it fits for this movie. And like I said, they only had $100,000 to work with, so they worked with what they had. The setting, it felt, typical for a wood setting, right? But there's a lot of creepy parts of the woods that the movie did really highlight, and how this could be kind of Blair Witchian. And you get that vibe. And I guess having the portable camera to kind of go in between at very few points of the movie, but it is there of like a found footage element or a screen recording element. I thought that was a nice touch to it as well. The gags in this movie might seem like to a lot of people like they are just kind of prolonging the inevitable and taking up screen time. But the misdirects here really do work because you are told early on that there could be something supernatural, or at least you're shown that, and you really have no idea in the beginning of all these events happening, whether this stuff is being done supernaturally, or is it just something by fate of circumstance, like the scene with the little bitch guy waking up in the middle of the night thinking that something has entered his body, and you find out what that shit is. That shit was hilarious. And that was a great misdirect because you probably weren't thinking at all that was the direction they were going. But it was funny as fuck. So I'll give them that. And going to the kills, while there are some off-screen kills, and it does take a little while to get to that point, and that is a mild negative with it, the kills we do get to see, there is one, I think, mild off-screen one, and there is a couple of ones that just seem okay, but there is one standout kill, and that's a kill that happens inside of the cabin with an axe, and I thought that was pretty brutal, the way that it was executed. And of course, the final kill of the movie, I thought that was pretty brutal as well. And yeah, it just, the kills were pretty serviceable, and you really did feel like, for the majority of it, at least for the majority of the characters that do end up dying, there might be some revenge exploitation notes in there to kind of make you understand that they did kind of deserve what was coming to them in a way. And they all had their own reasons for them actually dying. And I don't think a lot of people are going to pick up on this when they watch this movie, but every character has a reason of how they pissed off the dead or the land itself. Even the little bitch character, the big guy, the guy with the car, and the Latino guy. They all did something that would have been very anger-inducing for those reasons, and I get that. Even the babyface guy and the black guy arguably are just as guilty as the other four, and what happens to them is understandable in the situation too. So yeah, yeah, it's a very cool way to write the characters, and they all have their own involvement in the story, and it makes it stand out. Or they all have their own, key moments that imply a reason why to die. And I thought that was a really great way to tie that into the story. And yeah, in terms of the 80s setting, they worked with what they could, I guess. I don't really think that this movie needed to be set in 1986. And I heard from a comment that I read on one person's video that one of the creators or people behind the scenes said that they were going to originally do 79, but they couldn't find a 79 car, so they found an 86, so they changed it to Deer Camp 86, which is funny to me. But there are some moments that really do make me feel like it is the 80s, at least in terms of how the characters carry themselves and how they communicate with each other. Some of the humor, the VHS, of course, that they carry around. There's, I think, a portable Simon game that was from the 80s. That was like a big popular portable game that kids would play with. That was kind of used in a fun way in the film as well. So on that front, it is kind of believable that it's an 80s movie, but getting into the negatives, there's really no standout thing in this movie to really scream 1980s. It feels kind of pointless to set this movie in 86. You could have probably set this in modern times and been just fine. And just kept the humor as it is, and just it would have come off even more refreshing knowing that it takes place in modern times and not in the past, because that's even more depressing. But just food for thought on that. That's not even the biggest negative I have about the movie, but that is kind of there. Some other negatives I have with the movie, I will say the first 45 minutes of this film, there's like hardly anything significant happening in terms of like bloodshed. So if you're coming here for a supernatural slasher, I can totally get if you are not into this movie within the first 45 minutes. But while I really did enjoy that segment of the movie because the character stuff was just so funny and I liked the characters just interacting with each other, I do kind of wish there was a little more there. Perhaps the biggest missed opportunity with this film were the hillbilly characters from the bar from earlier on. I think that they should have been involved in this story way more than they were, sadly. We could have used them early on as some kill filler, done some fucked up shit to them. I don't know if budget was the reason why you were held back on doing that, but food for thought, that would have been a pretty cool thing to do to help the pace out a little bit in terms of like getting the action going. But I will say this, I didn't find the first 45 minutes to be totally dull, but I do see the missed opportunity there. So that is a negative for me, sadly. And, one last negative I have with this, with this movie is the ending twist to it. Honestly, I don't see what the point of that ending twist was, like the final note of the film. It just kind of takes away what happened beforehand, and it just makes it so confusing. And I don't know the direction choice behind that. Maybe one of the creators, if you're out there watching, you can kind of tell me in the comment section what was going on there. Or maybe if you ever make like a deluxe version of this movie and you make some special features, you can, elaborate on the idea behind the twist there. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of that. That's probably like the only moment of the movie I was like, oh man, come on. But yeah, and aside from, one off-screen kill, which I guess was still cool because of the gore, and maybe some moments of the movie that I felt could have been condensed down even further. You could have probably shaved off 5 to 10 minutes of this movie and still been perfectly fine. You probably could have gotten rid of the idea of the whole animal thing in the movie, but since it kind of was relevant for a specific character who may or may not, get the axe, I get why it's there. You could have possibly honed in the idea a bit better on that front of, paying respect to the land and honoring the people who inhabit the land or whatever. But I had a blast with this movie. Those issues are not that big to me because after watching this, I wanted to find myself watching this again. And as a matter of fact, I have lined this up in November, which this movie takes place in because it's deer hunting season in November, duh. But this feels like this could be an annual Thanksgiving time watch for me. I'm glad I bought this on my on a whim and have it on physical. I kind of wish I had the Blu-ray, but I'm totally fine, taking this out and, kind of cutting up the sleeve and putting it into a Blu-ray and making it look like a Blu-ray because the DVD transfer on this was pretty decent. If you're out there kind of questioning which one to get, you're fine with the DVD here. If you're kind of worried about the quality of the movie after seeing the trailer, or maybe, you don't want to blind buy something, seriously, if you have Amazon Prime or you have access to find this movie on streaming, or maybe you want to rent it or something, seriously do so. Go support these guys. They made a hell of a film here, and I am stoked. I'm absolutely stoked to say that I own this movie in my collection. Yeah. So from a 0 to 5 star basis, honestly, I love this movie. And when I talk about love for a movie, we're getting above a 4 out of 5 stars. So I'm going to be a little more fair than I usually am than I probably would be on other films. And I'd probably give this movie like a 4.25 out of 5 stars. Yeah, I love this film. Unapologetically. And I think it's one of my favorite horror films that I've seen in 2024, bar none. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Deer Camp 86. Let me know down in the comment section if you have seen this movie before. Do you love this? Do you hate this? I'm dying to know. And I'll see you next time.